Okay, now the final big point, or penultimate big point I want to talk about is how Rawls kind of summarizes the points just made into this big picture account of kind of what society is and what society is for, and how distribution and how justice fit into a picture of society's uh, structure, nature, and value. It says, I shall maintain instead that the persons in the original position would choose two rather different principles. That is, not the principle of utility. The first principle requires equality in the assignment of basic rights and duties, while the second principle holds that social and economic inequalities, for example, inequalities of wealth and authority, are just only if they result in compensating benefits for everyone, and in particular for the least advantaged members of society. These principles rule out justifying institutions on the grounds that the hardships of some are offset by a greater good in the aggregate. It may be expedient, but it is not just that some should have less in order that others may prosper. But there is no injustice in the greater benefits earned by a few, provided that the situation of persons not so fortunate is thereby improved. The intuitive idea is that since everyone's well-being depends upon a scheme of cooperation without which no one could have a satisfactory life, the division of advantages should be such as to draw forth the willing cooperation of everyone taking part in it, including those less well situated. Yet this can be expected only if reasonable terms are proposed. The two principles mentioned seem to be a fair agreement, on the basis of which those better endowed or more fortunate in their social position, neither of which we can be said to deserve, could expect the willing cooperation of others when some workable scheme is a necessary condition of the welfare of all. Once we decide to look for a conception of justice that nullifies the accidents of natural endowment and the contingencies of social circumstance, as counters in quest for political and economic advantage, we are led to these principles. They express the result of leaving aside those aspects of the social world that seem arbitrary from a moral point of view. All right, so that's the kind of big picture idea here, right? It's this, Rawls is basing his views on this theory of society, where society is the scheme of cooperation that all of us depend on for being able to live a satisfactory life. And so if that's right, then we should only kind of rationally agree to the way a society is set up if society's advantages are divided in a way that kind of helps everybody, right? So that it's rational for everybody to cooperate in taking part in it. Okay? And also, in distributing goods in accordance with Rawls' two principles, we don't let distributions just be determined by things that are kind of morally arbitrary, like what family we happen to be born into, or what neighborhood we happen to be born into, or whatever. Right? Rather, what people should get depends on what makes everybody best off. Okay, so that's the big picture. Oh, sorry. Final point. Okay, so there's Rawls' big picture argument, which you can go look at on your own. So now here's our question, right? We're not just doing philosophy for the sake of kind of thinking about some interesting ideas. We're trying to figure out what our society is like, whether our society meets these criteria, right? Do we live in a just society according to Rawls? Now, as far as I can tell, on any reasonable interpretation of Rawls and any reasonable view of the relevant facts about our society, the answer is no, we do not live in a just society according to Rawls. Even if we were to assume that we all have maximum equal rights and liberties in accordance with the first principle, and we assume that all powers and opportunities are open to all under conditions of fair equality of opportunity in accordance with the second part of the second principle, and hint, both of those assumptions are almost certainly false, especially the second one, our society definitely does not satisfy the difference principle. Definitely not. We can make very easy changes to improve the condition of the worst off, for example, by strengthening safety net systems or increasing the minimum wage, and so on, right? Without making things worse for everybody, right? So, what does that mean? That means that we could not agree to how our society is set up from behind the veil of ignorance. Right? And so we could not rationally consent to our society being set up as it is. And so, as we saw, our society is, in a crucial moral sense, illegitimate. Okay, now that's a hard kind of pill to swallow for some people, but I think if Rawls's view is right, then our society is not just, or at least our distribution of primary social goods is not just. So how about that? What do you think? Do you think it's true that we don't satisfy the difference principle? Uh, do you like Rawls's picture? Uh, what should we conclude about our society and what we should do on the basis of what we've read about for today? Okay, that is finally, honestly, the last slide in a very long discussion. I hope you found it at least somewhat interesting and at least helpful in helping you understand Rawls. I'll upload another PowerPoint like this about the Nozick and the Nielsen shortly after those readings are due as well. Okay, talk to you soon. Have a good one. Goodbye.